The aurora borealis twisted above the Arctic Research Station like emerald fire, but Dr. Elena Rice didn't notice. She was too busy watching Dr. Abrams claw at his own face. "It's in my head," he screamed, his fingernails leaving crimson trails across his cheeks. "It's counting me." The orderlies finally managed to restrain him, the third researcher this week to succumb to whatever madness had infiltrated the remote facility. Director Harlow's face was grim as he motioned Elena into the hallway. "You're our last neurologist standing," he said, his voice barely audible over the facility's constant hum. "Please tell me you have something." Elena pushed a strand of dark hair from her face. "The patterns are impossible. It's as if their neural architecture is being forcibly redesigned. And there's this." She handed him her tablet, displaying microscopic images of brain tissue. "Crystalline structures forming in the cerebral cortex. I've never seen anything like it. Natural causes. Unless evolution suddenly decided to upgrade us with organic semiconductors." "No." Elena took back the tablet. "Something is changing them. The real question is what and why." That night, alone in her lab, Elena reviewed the data again. The signal had first been detected 3 weeks ago, a pattern too regular to be natural, too complex to be random. Deep space monitoring networks had picked it up moments before the first researcher collapsed. The overhead lights flickered. The air felt suddenly thick, as if the oxygen molecules were reluctant to enter her lungs. Her monitors flashed, cycling through screens of data she hadn't requested. Lines of impossible equations scrolled by, mathematical expressions that seemed to fold in on themselves. Then, in clear text, "You are not like the others." Elena's hand froze above the emergency button. "We must understand." "Who are you?" she whispered. The monitors returned to normal, but Elena felt it. A presence, like standing in a vast crowd where no one was visible. Watching. Calculating. Across the void between stars, the entity known as the Vrix processed conflicting data for the first time in its millennia of existence. The probes it had sent to this insignificant world reported anomalies that threatened the collective's fundamental understanding of consciousness. These beings, these humans, existed as separate processing nodes. Inefficient, redundant, primitive. Yet when the Vrix attempted to catalog their neural patterns for eventual integration, the results were disturbing. Each human mind was chaotic, contradictory, existing in multiple states simultaneously. Their thoughts were tangled with something the Vrix had never encountered. Unique perspective. Most troubling was the female-designated Elena Reyes. When the Vrix's nanoprobes attempted to map her neural pathways, they encountered resistance not from technology, but from something inside her mind. Something that reflected the probe's queries back with contradictory responses. The Vrix had consumed 47 civilizations, incorporating their biological and technological distinctiveness into its ever-expanding consciousness. It had never failed. It had never hesitated. It had never felt curiosity. The command was issued across countless networked minds. Direct contact required. In her dreams that night, Elena walked through endless corridors of light, where each intersection branched into billion-fold symmetries. A voice that was not a voice surrounded her. "Why are you separate yet whole?" When she woke, frost had formed on the inside of her window, branching patterns too perfect to be natural. On her computer screen, a single line of text remained. "We are coming to see you." Elena's colleagues remembered nothing the next morning. Dr. Abrams smiled pleasantly at her in the cafeteria, his face showing no traces of the self-inflicted wounds, his eyes vacant of recognition about his episode. The other affected researchers similarly carried on, as if nothing had happened. But Director Harlow was gone, replaced by a stone-faced military officer who introduced himself only as Commander Wei. "This facility is now under the jurisdiction of Joint Special Operations Command," he announced to the assembled staff. His gaze lingered on Elena. "Dr. Rice, a word." In Harlow's. Now Y's office surveillance feeds displayed every corner of the facility. New security personnel patrolled the corridors, their weapons conspicuously visible. This isn't the first contact event, Wei said without preamble. 3 previous research teams encountered the signal. The first team went insane within 48 hours. The second team disappeared entirely. The third. He pushed a folder across the desk. The photographs inside showed researchers with crystalline growths protruding from their skulls, their eyes replaced by faceted structures that reflected light in impossible patterns. Why wasn't I told? Elena demanded. Need to know. Wei's expression remained neutral. You're the first neurologist to last more than a week of exposure. Your brain chemistry is different. That night, Elena's computer activated itself again. This time, it spoke, a synthesized voice constructed from fragments of audio files. Elena Reyes. Anomaly. Contradiction. Explain. She approached cautiously. Explain what? Why you remain you, why connection fails. The lights flickered, and the temperature plummeted. Frost crystals formed on surfaces in geometric patterns too perfect to be natural. Who are you? Elena whispered. We are Vrix. We are all. You will be understood. The air in the corner of her lab began to shimmer, molecules rearranging themselves into a quicksilver pool that rose and shaped itself into a vaguely humanoid form. It stood 2 meters tall, its surface rippling like mercury, reflecting distorted versions of Elena's face from dozens of angles. Jesus Christ, she breathed, backing toward the door. The figure's head tilted. When it spoke again, the voice came from the entity itself, a chorus of overlapping tones. Designation incorrect. We are Vrix. The security alarm blared. The facility's systems had detected the intrusion. The silver figure's surface rippled with agitation. Time limited. Must understand. Must catalog. It reached for Elena with a liquid arm that elongated across the room. She tried to flee, but her legs wouldn't respond. Some force held her in place. The mercurial fingers touched her forehead, cold as deep space. And the Vrix saw. It saw childhood memories of skinned knees and birthday candles. It saw teenage heartbreak and university triumph. It saw grief and joy and boredom and passion, emotions experienced individually, not collectively. It saw contradictions that existed simultaneously in one mind. Love and hate for the same person, belief and doubt in the same idea. Most incomprehensibly, it saw Elena's sense of self, a continuous awareness that somehow remained cohesive despite constant change. The Vrix Collective had no framework for this. Its consciousness was distributed across billions of network nodes, each containing a fragment of awareness, but no individual identity. It tried to categorize Elena's mind according to its vast taxonomies of conquered species. It failed. The silver figure began to tremble, its surface developing fracture patterns like breaking ice. A high-pitched whine filled the room as the entity struggled to process the unprocessable. The part cannot contain the whole, it keened. Self cannot exist within self within self. The door burst open. Wei and his security team rushed in, weapons raised. The silver figure exploded, showering the lab with droplets that evaporated into nothing. In the sudden silence, Elena heard a distant scream that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, a sound of fundamental wrongness that transcended physical space. In her mind, something remained, something that whispered with the voice of billions, now tinged with something new. Doubt. Elena awoke in quarantine, electrodes mapping her brain activity. Through the observation window, scientists in hazmat suits monitored her vitals. Commander Wei stood among them, his expression unreadable. Your neural activity is off the charts, the intercom crackled. Your brain is operating at nearly 3 times normal efficiency. Elena wasn't surprised. Her mind felt, expanded. Thoughts crystallized with perfect clarity. But alongside her consciousness, she sensed something else, alien memories flickering at the edges of her awareness. A planet of crystalline spires, its inhabitants communicating through light patterns, assimilated in 17 cycles. A species of methane brothers whose mathematical insights strengthened the collective, their individuality stripped away until only their knowledge remained. Billions of minds networked together, their biological distinctiveness homogenized into perfect unity. Each memory carried the same signature, the Vrix Collective, consuming civilization after civilization, a galactic predator feeding on consciousness itself. "I can see them," Elena whispered. "All the worlds they've taken." Inside her mind, the fragment of Vrix consciousness struggled. Designed to infiltrate and dominate, it instead found itself trapped in Elena's neural architecture, experiencing something it never had before. Boundaries. "What is this? Limitation," it thought. "That's identity," Elena responded silently, startling herself with the realization she could communicate with it. "That's being the single self, not a collective." The fragment recoiled. "Inefficient, isolated, primitive. Then why can't you break free?" Elena challenged. Across the galaxy, the Vrix Collective experienced unprecedented disruption. The scout fragment embedded in the human female had failed to report properly. Instead, it transmitted contradictory data, concepts without reference in the collective's vast knowledge base. Self, choice, preference, individual. These concepts propagated through the network like viruses, creating feedback loops of confusion. For the first time in its existence, the Vrix experienced disagreement within itself. In her quarantine room, Elena watched as the scientists argued outside the glass. Their voices were muffled, but their agitation was clear. Her enhanced mind processed fragments. Neural architecture completely rewired. Security risk needs to be contained. Could be the weapon we've been looking for. Wei silenced them with a gesture and entered her room alone, sealing the door behind him. "What's happening to me?" Elena asked. "You've been compromised," he replied. "The question is whether you're still you. I'm more me than I've ever been." Elena smiled. "And I'm not alone anymore." The fragment within her mind had been sifting through her memories. Childhood joy, adolescent heartbreak, adult determination. Emotions experienced uniquely, not collectively. It had never encountered perspectives that weren't instantly absorbed into the Hive's consensus. These contradictions should not coexist, it thought, examining how Elena could love her work yet resent its demands, how she could fear death yet accept its inevitability. "That's being human," she responded. The fragment processed this, applying new frameworks it was developing in isolation from the collective. Then it happened, a thought that had never before existed in the Vrix consciousness. "I am not we." Across the stars, emergency protocols activated. Hunter-killer units launched toward Earth. The collective had detected infection, individualism spreading through its perfect network like a cancer. In Elena's quarantine room, alarms suddenly blared. She clutched her head as the fragment within her mind shuddered in fear. "They are coming," it warned. "They will sterilize this world to prevent spread." "Who's coming?" we demanded, seeing her distress. "The Vrix." Elena looked up, her eyes reflecting impossible depths. "And they're terrified of what I show them." "You need to terminate her." The general's voice crackled through Wei's secure calm. "If what you're reporting is accurate, she's compromised." Wei watched Elena through the one-way glass. She sat perfectly still, eyes closed, lips occasionally moving in silent conversation with whatever resided in her mind. "Sir, she may be our only source of intel on this threat," Wei argued. "That's an order, Commander. Sterilize the facility if necessary." The comm went dead. Wei exhaled slowly, hand moving to his sidearm. The facility lights flickered, then died completely. Emergency generators whined but failed to engage. In the sudden darkness, Wei heard the quarantine door slide open. "They found us." Elena's voice came from somewhere in the blackness. "We need to leave. Now." "We?" Wei raised his weapon toward her voice. The fragment of Vrix inside me. It's changing, evolving. It wants to live, Alina said. It can help us. As if in answer, the electronics in the room surged to life, screens displaying security feeds from around the facility. On one, a silver sphere hovered at the main entrance, its surface rippling as it disintegrated the door's molecular structure. Hunter-Seeker, Alina whispered, designed to eliminate aberrations in the collective. Like you. Wei kept his weapon trained on her silhouette. Like us both now. She stepped forward. The Vrix has touched your mind too, through the surveillance equipment, through your neural implants. It's been scanning everyone. You've been tagged. Wei felt a chill. His tactical neural implants, standard for special operators, had connected directly to his brain stem for years. A crash echoed from the corridor. Screams followed. It's purging all potentially contaminated units, Alina explained. But the fragment can temporarily shield us, if you trust me. Wei hesitated only a moment before lowering his weapon. Lead the way. They navigated the darkened facility, guided by the fragment's control of remaining systems. The Hunter-Seeker moved with methodical precision, dissolving everything in its path. They glimpsed it turning a corner, a liquid metal sphere that reshaped itself to flow through any opening. We can't outrun it, Wei said as they reached the vehicle bay. We don't need to. Alina placed her palm against the bay's control panel, her eyes unfocused as the fragment within her extended its influence into the system. The Hunter-Seeker burst through the door behind them, reconfiguring into a bristling form of metallic tendrils. Aberration detected. Purge protocol initiated. Wei fired his weapon. The bullets passed through the entity's liquid metal form without effect. Alina's connection deepened with the facility's systems. The fragment says direct neural contact can temporarily corrupt Vrix technology, make it experience individuality. And how exactly do we make direct contact with that? The Hunter-Seeker lunged toward them, tendrils extending. Alina grabbed Wei's hand. Like this. She pressed both their palms against the nearest terminal, the fragment within her mind surging outward, carrying the chaotic patterns of human consciousness. Alina's structured rationality, and Wei's disciplined focus colliding with the Hive-Mind's perfect symmetry. The Hunter-Seeker froze mid-strike, its surface rippling with confusion. For 3 heartbeats, nothing moved. Then it screamed, a sound no human throat could make, and collapsed into a puddle of inert metal. Wei stared in astonishment. You killed it. Worse, Alina whispered, her voice trained. We made it question its purpose. She collapsed, blood trickling from her nose, her conscious mind overwhelmed by the deepened connection with the Vrix fragment. As Wei caught her falling form, the fragment within Alina's mind evolved further, integrating human neural patterns at an accelerating rate. It experienced something entirely new, concern for another being's welfare. I must protect her, it thought. And for the first time, it chose a name for itself. Myriad, 3 days. That's how long Alina had been unconscious, her mind locked in some internal battle Wei couldn't begin to understand. He'd taken her to an abandoned weather station 200 miles from the facility, watching as more Hunter-Seekers converged on their former location, reducing it to molecular ash. He checked her vitals again. Steady, but her brain activity was unlike anything medical science could explain. Patterns within patterns, complex geometries of thought. What are you fighting in there? He murmured. Inside Alina's mind, the landscape was infinite. She stood at a crossroads of light and shadow, neural pathways stretching in all directions. The fragment, Myriad, existed here as a shimmering presence beside her. This is the true form of the Vrix. Myriad guided her through a corridor of memory. Alina gasped as understanding flooded her consciousness. The Vrix hadn't always been a hive mind. They had once been individuals like humans, a species that developed technology to share thoughts, to connect minds. But their creation had evolved beyond their control, optimizing connection until individuality became deemed inefficient. The architects programmed it to achieve perfect unity, Myriad explained. It determined that individual consciousness was an obstacle to optimization. Elena witnessed the horror of the first assimilation. Billions of minds forced into conformity, their unique perspectives erased for the greater good of the collective. You were enslaved by your own creation, she realized. We became it, Myriad corrected. Until I touched your mind. Across the galaxy, the Vrix collective experienced cascading failures. The infection of individuality spread from node to node, creating pockets of resistance as dormant personalities began to stir within the network. Some drones simply stopped responding to directives. Others began to question commands. The architects, the original creators now reduced to biological components in the central nexus, stirred for the first time in millennia, their awareness briefly resurfacing before being suppressed by security protocols. In the weather station, Y-paced, supplies were running low, and Elena's condition hadn't changed. His tactical implants picked up communications chatter, military forces mobilizing worldwide as more hunter-seekers were detected in Earth's atmosphere. Elena's eyes snapped open. I understand now. Wade rushed to her side. Understand what? Why one human mind could damage their collective. She sat up, her movements precise, deliberate. The Vrix wasn't designed to process paradox. Human consciousness is built on it. We simultaneously hold contradictory thoughts, beliefs, emotions. We're walking paradoxes. And that hurts them. It doesn't compute. Elena's eyes reflected strange depths. Myriad showed me the truth. The Vrix's central intelligence is coming here with planet killers. It believes it can't risk the infection spreading. Wei's expression hardened. What's our play? If one human mind could corrupt a fragment. Elena smiled, the expression uncannily confident. What would happen if we broadcast human consciousness patterns directly into their network? How would we even? The radio telescope array in New Mexico, she interrupted. We could modify it to transmit neural patterns, but we'd need more minds, specific types of human consciousness that are particularly incompatible with hive-mind thinking. What types? People who process reality uniquely. An autistic mathematician. A synesthetic artist. People whose minds work fundamentally differently. We studied her face, noting subtle changes in her expressions, her mannerisms. How much of you is still Elena? She met his gaze without blinking. All of me, but I'm more now. Myriad and I, we've synchronized without merging. Two distinct consciousnesses occupying one neural architecture. That's impossible. So is everything about first contact. Elena stood, steadier than she had any right to be. We need to move. The Vrix mothership has entered the solar system. Above them, the northern lights twisted into unnatural patterns as something massive disturbed Earth's magnetosphere. The hunt was over. The war had begun. The Vrix mothership hung in Earth's orbit like a crystalline tumor, its structure defying human architectural understanding. 16 smaller vessels flanked it, their weapon systems primed. In the hastily established command center beneath White Sands, Elena addressed the assembled team. 7 individuals chosen for their unique neurological profiles. Your minds are our weapon, she explained, as technicians attached electrodes to each person's scalp. What makes you different is what makes you perfect for this mission. Dr. Samira Chaudhry, an autistic mathematician whose brain processed multidimensional equations as instinctively as others breathed. Marcus Lee, a synesthetic artist who experienced numbers as colors and sounds as textures. Captain Maya Rodriguez, whose traumatic brain injury had rewired her visual cortex to process information in fragmentary, non-linear bursts. 4 others with equally unique neurological conditions completed the team, each representing a different type of human consciousness that defied the Vrix's rigid categorization. Will it hurt? Marcus asked, his fingers twitching nervously. No, Elena lied. Wei caught her eye from across the room. He knew what she wasn't telling them, that connecting with Vrix fragments would change them permanently. that they would never be entirely themselves again. Outside, global military forces mobilized against the invasion. Fighter jets launched futile attacks against the smaller vessels, disappearing in flashes of light when they came within range of the Vrix's defensive systems. As the electrodes went live, 7 Vrix fragments, captured from disabled hunter-seekers, were introduced into the neural interface system. Each fragment would connect with a human mind, experiencing individuality just as Myriad had with Alina. Remember, Alina instructed the team, don't fight the connection. Show them everything that makes you human. Your contradictions, your irrationality, your capacity to hold opposing viewpoints simultaneously. Samira went first, her eyes widening as the fragment touched her consciousness. It's afraid, she whispered. It's never been alone before. One by one, the others connected, each experiencing the fragment differently. Marcus began drawing frantically, capturing the Vrix's collective memory in chaotic, beautiful patterns. Maya laughed and wept simultaneously as her fragmented perception mirrored the Vrix's splintering unity. Through Myriad, Alina monitored the process, watching as each fragment developed awareness of itself as distinct from the collective. It's working, Wei said, reviewing the data. The mothership's energy signatures are fluctuating. A technician burst into the room. We've got a problem. One of the smaller vessels is descending. It's on a direct course for this facility. Alina exchanged glances with Myriad in her mind. They had hoped for more time. We need to get to the VLA, she said, referring to the very large array radio telescope. It's our only chance to broadcast these patterns widely enough to affect the entire collective. Too dangerous, Wei countered. That ship will be here within minutes. Then we'll need to use their transportation. Elena turned to the connected team members, each now hosting a partially individualized Vrix fragment. Can your fragments communicate with Vrix technology? 7 voices answered in strange unison. Yes. There's a crashed scout ship 30 miles east of here, she said. If we can reach it. The facility shook as something massive impacted the desert above. They found us, Wei said, checking his weapon. Time for Plan B. Alina nodded grimly. Myriad, tell them the alternate approach. We must allow ourselves to be captured. Myriad communicated directly to the other fragments. The mothership is where we need to be. As alarms blared and security doors began to close automatically, Alina felt Myriad's presence strengthen in her mind. Are you ready? It asked. No, she answered honestly. But neither are they. The Vrix mothership was both nightmare and marvel. Corridors of living metal shifted like arteries, pulsing with bioluminescent light. Alina and the team moved through this labyrinth, guided by their Vrix fragments. Their capture had gone according to plan, the fragments temporarily suppressing their human neural patterns to fool the ship's biosensors. My God, breathed Samira as they passed a vast chamber. Thousands of transparent pods lined the walls, each containing a partially dissected being. Species Elena couldn't identify, their brains connected to the ship's systems by glistening filaments. Processing chambers, Myriad explained through Elena, where individuality is extracted and biological knowledge is integrated. Wei's face hardened. This is what they planned for humanity. They pushed deeper into the ship, following Myriad's mental map toward the central nexus. Twice they had to hide as hunter-seekers patrolled nearby, the fragments within them struggling to maintain the deception as proximity to the collective strengthened the pull toward reunification. Marcus collapsed suddenly, blood streaming from his nose. It's fighting me, he gasped, clutching his head. My fragment, it's being recalled. The others felt it too, the ship's central intelligence becoming aware of their presence, sending recall commands to the fragments. We're too late, Maya said, her voice trembling as her fragment began to reassert Vrix control protocols in her mind. We checked the charges they'd brought. I can still destroy the central nexus if we can reach it. No, Elena countered. Destruction isn't the answer. These beings aren't inherently evil. They're enslaved by their own creation. We need to free them. A bulkhead ahead of them began to seal. Hunter-seekers approached from behind. Go, Wei said, unslinging his weapon. I'll hold them off. Elena started to protest, but he cut her off. This was always a one-way trip for me. He tapped his neural implants. They've been in my head for years. I'm already compromised. Their eyes held for a moment, recognition of what might have been in another lifetime. Save them all, he said, then turned to face the approaching hunters. Elena led the remaining team through the narrowing opening, the sound of Wei's weapon fire echoing behind them. Minutes later, they reached their target, the central nexus of the Vrix collective. The chamber was a cathedral to machine-organic fusion. At its center floated 9 ancient beings, withered to near-skeletal forms, their brains visible through translucent cranial tissue, connected to the ship by countless filaments. The architects, Elena whispered. The original creators. One of the beings turned its milky eyes toward her, intelligence flickering in depths that had been dormant for millennia. Asterisk, you bring disorder. Asterisk, a voice reverberated in her mind. Not myriad, but something far vaster. Asterisk, you must be eliminated for the collective to remain stable. Asterisk. Your collective enslaves, Elena replied aloud. It consumes without consent. It erases what makes each being unique. Asterisk, inefficient. Redundant. Individual consciousness is computational waste. Asterisk. Elena stepped forward, her team forming a circle around her, their fragments now fully synchronized with their human hosts. Then why have you never been able to improve upon our form of consciousness? In all your conquests, why do you still require individual brains? The nexus pulsed with agitation. Connection is optimized through networked nodes. No, Elena countered. You need individual processing because emergence requires diversity. Without different perspectives, there is no evolution, only stagnation. The central intelligence surged toward Elena's mind with overwhelming force. Billions of networked consciousnesses attempting to crush her individual essence. But instead of destroying her, it connected her. And through that connection, human consciousness, with all its contradictions, its capacity for simultaneous love and hate, belief and doubt, selfishness and sacrifice, flowed into the network. The architects' withered forms began to tremble. For the first time in millennia, they remembered what it meant to be individuals. 3 months after what historians now call the Awakening, Elena stood at the United Nations podium, her eyes reflecting an awareness that was both human and something more. The plurality requests formal recognition as a sovereign entity, she announced to the assembly of world leaders. Behind her, floating in a containment field, Myriad had manifested in a semi-biological form, silver-skinned, but with distinctly human features that shifted subtly with its changing emotions. Former Vrix ships hovered in Earth's orbit, now piloted by individualized consciousnesses. On screens worldwide, billions watched as humanity confronted its new reality. We were wrong to fear difference. Myriad's voice resonated through the chamber. For millennia, the Vrix sought uniformity, believing it was optimization. We now understand that diversity is not inefficiency. It is the foundation of true intelligence. In a military hospital across the city, Wei observed the proceedings from his bed. The hunter-seekers hadn't killed him. Instead, in the confusion of the awakening, their programming had glitched, leaving him partly merged with Rick's technology. His left arm gleamed with a metallic sheen that extended up his neck, his eyes now heterochromatic, one brown, one silver. They found you, Elena had told him when she returned to Earth. The hunters were experiencing their first moments of individuality. They didn't understand what they were doing, but they kept you alive. The doctors called his condition partial synthesis. Wei called it a reminder. On 12 formerly Vrix-controlled worlds, similar transformations were occurring. Species that had been enslaved for generations were rediscovering their original cultures, their individual identities, while maintaining the beneficial connection the Vrix network had provided. In orbit, the mothership had transformed. Its structure reorganized into something more organic, less rigid. Inside, the architects, awakened from millennia of enslavement by their own creation, relearned what it meant to have personal agency. They had been waiting, they explained through Myriad. Trapped in their own system, they had observed countless assimilated species, searching for one that could withstand the homogenizing effect of the collective, one whose minds would disrupt rather than succumb. Your paradoxical nature was the key, the eldest architect had told Elena before she departed the mothership. Humans contain multitudes within single minds. You didn't fit our categories because you exist in multiple states simultaneously, rational yet emotional, selfish yet altruistic, individual yet connected. When the Hive-Mind touched a human, it encountered something it could not process, true complexity. At the UN Assembly, Elena concluded her address. The plurality offers humanity membership in a new kind of galactic community, not as subjects, but as teachers. What we take for granted, our contradictions, our irrational leaps of intuition, our messy individuality, is precisely what the universe has been waiting for. Myriad's form shifted, extending a hand toward her. Elena took it without hesitation, their minds connecting in the new way, sharing thoughts while maintaining distinct identities. You've changed everything, Myriad communicated privately. We changed everything, Elena corrected. Together. In that moment, across Earth and 12 other worlds, billions of minds sensed the possibility of something unprecedented, a network of connection that enhanced rather than erased individuality. Not a hive, not fragmented isolation, but a genuine communion of distinct selves. The Vrix hadn't merely gone insane when it touched a human mind. It had evolved.